I'm going to share a little story going right back to when I was in high school. And one of the things that I realized in probably like my second to last year of high school was that I had this ability which was not a skill that I knew about or was overtly talked about until I got to year 11 English. And I had a really great teacher who I, through her teaching, was able to recognize some of the, I guess, innate but latent skills or the things that hadn't necessarily been named or valued before in my education, right? So we're, in the education system, those who are gifted, who have particular skills, who shine in either academically or in sports or whatever way, you get noticed and you get sort of channeled into those things because if you were at the kind of school I was at, private girls' school, it was a lot of external validation, as in we get prizes, you win awards, there's this idea that you were representing the school. And so they wanted to identify those that were deemed most successful in whatever arena. And I really never fit into any of those things. Like I loved theater. That was always a joy to me. And, I studied theater and I was good at it and I enjoyed it. But, it wasn't necessarily one of the subjects or areas in which you were going to necessarily make the school look better. They wanted like the athletes and the really smart kids. And there were lots of programs and ways that those people who had really obvious skills that could be recognized and the school could be rewarded for, like winning at inter-school sports carnivals or competing in, whatever competitions that brought the school more recognition as being really great. I was not one of those kids. I did not shine in any particular area in a way that would be validated or rewarded. And, I had the things that I loved, the humanities, theater, English, history, those sorts of subjects were my natural fit. But it wasn't until year 11 with this particular English teacher who named for me something that I had this really great skill at. And it's something that I have realized that in reflection has been a huge asset to me through all of the different ways that I have built my service in the world. And that skill is of intertextuality. Yeah, not sexy, right? I don't think there were many competitions that were going to, be won in the name of intertextuality. But as a skill, it has served me so well. And basically what it means is that I can, or those who have this capacity to think intertextually, is literally read or understand one paradigm, one framework through another, and to make connections between both literal texts and ideas and ways of thinking. So that was this revelation when I got to year 11 and realized that I actually had this skill that came easily to me. I got really good grades whenever we were doing intertextual based work, and being able to connect the dots to make meaning in ways that others weren't necessarily reading texts together, right? So in my life, that has been my work. And I realized that, as a nearly 50-year-old woman, it has positioned me so well to do what I do. And what I do now with the Institute is to bring my training as an academic and bring that academic ethical rigor, that research foundation, that evidence-based understanding to the unregulated spiritual industry. And so I can organize information in a way from these seemingly disparate worlds so that there is more rigor, more structure, more frameworks to what is often with the spiritual world really big, amorphous, seemingly endless possibilities and propositions. A lot of it is conspiracy. A lot of it is real ancient truth. A lot of it is contemporary science. But there's so many different, I guess, texts or frameworks that inform the spiritual conversation. And I have a capacity to be able to organize information from seemingly disparate worlds or realms into coherence so that others may be able to access those ideas in a way that feels safe or more able to be applied and recognized. And I'm just taking a moment to honor that teacher who brought my attention to this skill that had previously sort of been unnamed, but has gone on to define not only my business now, but all of my professional career. And it's a really interesting thing to sit with and reflect. And at this moment in time, this capacity to be able to think divergently, to think outside of one particular framework or worldview, and to be able to engage with other ideas, other frameworks, other systems, and to understand their similarities, to find where they both converge and separate, and to be able to see beyond one particular way of believing or thinking about the world. In the academic world, we call this, ontology, and being able to think in this ontological way or make meaning in a way that is not always about, there has to be reason and evidence, and that capacity and skill to bring both the reason and the, I guess, more subtle or less evidence-based information together, but in a systematic, digestible, metabolizable way so that it is made real and applied to people's lives. And this is where the work of the Institute, I think, is so profound, because there is a lot in the spiritual world, right? We know that we can follow and fall down a lot of different rabbit holes. But ultimately, what my students and clients are always seeking, and I think we're all seeking, is how is this thing that I am giving my time, attention, energy, resources to positively changing my life? How am I able to be better at whatever it is I want to be able to do in the world, no matter how I want to show up, whatever it is that I'm seeking, so that it is not just more knowledge and information, but how can I live it? And I called this applied spiritual practice, right? So there's a lot of spiritual ideas, there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of practices, there's a lot of dogma, there's a lot of different schools of thought, there's a lot of different faiths, there's a lot of different ideas. But when we can read them intertextually, and when we can put them in a framework that brings that rigor and that sort of ethical understanding, we can bring it to life in a way that is applied, structured, livable, and embodied. And that is what is so often missing, I feel, in this spiritual industry, is that we can fall down joyfully all these different rabbit holes, but what do we bring back to our lives? How do we live it? How do we apply it? How do we make it real so that we have more success, however we measure that? Joy, contentment, ease, peace, self-worth, perhaps it's financial abundance, maybe it's something different, a different metric for you, but there is a measurable improvement in my quality of life. That improvement might simply being able to be hold an inner state of grace even when the world seems to be falling apart around us, because our capacity to make meaning isn't limited to, if there is war going on here, everything is bad and everything is wrong and I am not allowed to feel happy, which is a very, flat way of engaging with the world. And spirituality invites paradox, and it invites us to find comfort in paradox and contradiction. And that is not a failure. If everything could be explained away, then we would be missing the point of the spiritual journey, which is actually to know less, to give up ideas and to become comfortable with the mysteries and to not necessarily need everything explained. So I bring all of that intertextual skill to a way to apply our spiritual practice so that we can measure change in our lives. We can see that we are moving towards something. And for me, that is very much grounded in this idea of cosmology. So stay with me. I know I'm introducing some big words here. You may be deeply familiar with them. But this idea of cosmology is like we all have our own cosmology. And this is mirrored in so many of the great spiritual teachings, which say we do not objectively live in the world or perceive the world. We perceive it through our personality, through our identity, through the collection of subconscious programs that we're running. And everybody's experience of life is different because we are viewing it through a subjective lens. And that is something that is so essential for us to make peace with understanding the chaos that we're seeing in the world right now, right? There are so many competing cosmologies. And a cosmology is really the universe of meaning that you are living inside of. So we can think of this idea that, there is an empirical, external, objective idea that we live inside of a universe. And that universe has certain functionings and functions according to the laws, depending on whether you follow Newtonian physics or quantum physics. But even that is part of the choice of what you include or exclude in your cosmology. So the idea of cosmology is it's how we inhabit, interact, and move through the world based on these core ideas of what the world is. So, simple example, some people you meet are the glass half full optimists and some are the glass half empty pessimists. That is a cosmological position, right? I live in a world where the glass is half full and I am optimistic and I stay attuned to that even when there is a lot going on that I cannot explain or necessarily reconcile. And if I was the pessimist, I would have a very different perception, a different cosmology. And so part of the work that I do is to help people understand the cosmology, the meaning-making system that they are living inside of, and recognizing where there are limits or even contradictions or causes of chaos because that cosmology has not been fully recognized. We're all living inside of our own version of reality. No one is living the same experience as anyone else because we are living through our perception. So our cosmology is really the perception lens of how we make meaning out of the events that occur both in our lives and in the world more globally. And so we're seeing in this world right now a lot of competing cosmologies, and there is chaos as a result of that, because if there's 8 billion versions of reality, it's really hard to get everyone on the same page, right? So my job as a spiritual teacher, as a guide in this world, is to support people to recognize the cosmology that they've built for themselves and to upgrade it if there are deficits in that cosmology that are forming the foundation of reality. And this is such a powerful way for us to realize that not only is the world not an objective truth, it is entirely dependent on the level of perception that we are participating in it, that we can alter that perception, upgrade the cosmology that we're living inside of, and come into the success that may have felt elusive. Many people on the spiritual path actually become less happy, less content, less joyful, less successful as they go on the journey, because this journey is typified by loss. What we are losing is ultimately for our gain, for our benefit, but it may not feel like that, right? I think this idea that, we say, okay, bring me more abundance, bring me more love, bring me more joy, will be just handed to us on a plate. But if your cosmology is in contradiction to what you're calling in, whatever is in that worldview, that perception that is not aligned with abundance, joy, love, whatever you're calling in, will have to be eliminated, right? And so then we start to feel loss. That job that is keeping us unhappy, underpaid, in a sense of poverty, powerless, will suddenly get fired from. And even though we know that the job was not the job of our dreams and we want more of the good things, we may feel like that's a punishment, that we're losing something because how am I going to survive, right? But actually, you're just being given exactly what you've requested, which is there is no room for more abundance if you stay in a job that is keeping you poor, treating you badly, and taking up all your time, right? So that had to go. But if we haven't prepared by being ready to upgrade our perception, our cosmology, that way that we've made meaning out of reality, all we will feel is, I've been punished by God or higher power, or the world is working against me because now I have no job and no money. But it's a step on the path. And part of this is the courage and the willingness to look through a correct perception, to upgrade our sense of perception, to be ready to receive what we say we want. And the things that are not a match are going to have to go, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't stay in the shitty underpaying job that's draining the life out of you and expect that abundance to be able to flow, because your actions are not a match for what you've called in. So for a time, we may feel like we go through a loss and a grieving process. All of this I'm sharing with you because really my job right now is to support all of us, including myself, with real, actionable, applied, practical spiritual wisdom to live through these extremely challenging, confronting, and uncomfortable times where it feels like we may be losing more than we're gaining. And there is no one that I meet who isn't overwhelmed, exhausted, just unable to know how to go forward. What is it that is right action? Even if they're taking action, even if they're showing up, because the world is very, very contradictory and confusing and uncomfortable. And it's for good reason, but we may not be able to perceive that if our worldview, our cosmology is that everything is going wrong, right? So my job is to be looking intertextually at all of the information, knowledge, wisdom, gnosis, practices, tools that I've been initiated into over my long decades, and to bring it to the world in a way that can be applied, lived, embodied, and actionable so that we do not feel hopeless. And coming to this idea of how we shift our perception so that we can improve the cosmology, the world, the universe that we've built for ourselves is such a profound gift. And that is exactly what I am offering. So I'm going to be sharing more about a training called Humility, Grace, Power that is applied spiritual practice, how you can understand the cosmology you're living inside of now and how to upgrade it. And it isn't about me telling you things that you don't already know. I have also never met a spiritual seeker in my work who doesn't know a lot, but how we take that knowledge into gnosis, how we bring it into lived, embodied wisdom that is applied to see benefit to our lives, not just here's my spirituality over here and then here's the shit show of my life over there. Because what is the point of that? Humility, Grace, Power is a journey to bring you into that framework that you can embody based on your own cosmology and make it lived and applicable to whatever shows up, right? We're not waiting for the day where everything is peaceful outside of us. We are making peace inside of the chaos. And that is then our gift to the shared collective energy that we're all inhabiting. Humility, Grace, Power is a formula I've been working with for a long time. And it is the formula that I believe keeps us in right action and prevents us from getting trapped into the ego traps that are on this spiritual path, just as they are on any path, but can be really sneaky in the spiritual world. And this is the antidote. So overlaying this applied spiritual practice, we are also being initiated into this formula of humility, grace, power, which is a circular formula that allows us to know how to respond in any moment, depending on the machinations of the ego and what the ego is trying to do to limit us, to keep us in the same, because it likes familiarity. It doesn't matter if you're happy or not. It's familiar, and familiar is comfortable, and change is scary. So humility, grace, power is that toolkit, not of more knowledge, information. You know it. We'll review it. We'll look at it, but organizing it into an applied, practical, spiritual wisdom that is your manifesto for your cosmology, recognizing where your cosmology, your perception, your worldview is lacking in the qualities that you are calling in and making no space for it, so that we can make the space for you to be in receivership of everything that you have learnt, that you have studied so deeply, so that your spirituality becomes a roadmap for how to navigate the world, not just a whole bunch of nice ideas and books and programs that sit there gathering dust. Because how do I bring that into this world, right? There's no intersection. And that's my job. Intertextual boss babe. I don't know if anyone's going to buy that idea, but I like it. I like the idea very much that we are the creators of our own reality. But when we're in our blind spots, we may be causing our own trouble. And we definitely are. So I'll share more info on humility, grace, power. 6 weeks, super amazing, super fun. It will organize all of the information that you already have and turn it into that gnosis, that lived experience. And I'm so grateful that you're here, and so grateful that we get to go on this journey together and upgrade that internal perception system, that identity, and the capacity to build a cosmology that is aligned with what we truly crave and desire. So stay tuned for that. I will be sharing that information in the coming days and weeks, and I am so honored and grateful to get to do this for a job. My year 11 English teacher was onto something. Little did I know that being really good at intertextuality would serve me so well one day. So much love to you all.